So we got the parts all clean. Still need to true the wheels. I'm gonna do a detail on that. But something's going on with the headset. Yeah, it seems quite grindy. So I'm gonna take the adjuster cap off and take the stem and handlebars off. And let's just take a little gander on what's going on. So to the side. Pull your stack, spacers. These will have a little wedge in them. That's the cover there. Protective cover. And, oh, grindy. Not like it. Not good. So you take a little tap. That wedges that little wedge piece out so you can get the headset out. So we're going to take a little, just trying to see some ick, what I call professional ick, and lo and behold, this is seeing some moisture, a lot of it.
Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with a guy. Hi, I'm Justin the Guy. Obviously I have a garage shop. Take scary out of used, one bike at a time. If you want to be kept up to date on latest projects and topics, please like and subscribe.
Yeah, when he said he rode to Seattle to Portland, that really happened. So yeah, this rust is causing some problems, and the bearing, yeah, this definitely needs to be completely cleaned out. And I'm figuring the top bearing feels okay, but if I can get the bottom bearing to free itself, it's coming slowly through the grindy of rust. Oh yeah, crunch. Yeah, that's crunchy. So. So what you get to do in this situation, you can still get bearings for these. The DI is usually stamped on here somewhere, and then you can get a replacement to go in there. The bottom one is definitely toast. I think these have mirrored bearings, so there's not differential difference between the two. So if I can find just one to replace that, if worst case scenario, I can go and contact Creaky, go on eBay, maybe go to my local Trek store, possibly, since it's a Trek, they may have one of these. Most likely not, because it's pretty older. If you get a bearing something like this, you can pull the seals off, clean it all out, ultrasonic cleaner, get all that gunk out and refresh it. Sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, sometimes they come back to life. I have done that before because, you know, some of those older bearings just don't exist anymore unless you want to pay $300 to $500 for one from overseas. Nobody wants to do that for a bike that's not even that. Not saying this does, but I mean for that particular case back then. So we're going to be doing some cleaning. If this is this gunked up, I'm going to pop the bottom bracket because I want to see if anything drained down there. And if it is gunky, like the bottom bracket felt good, so its cartridge is still intact, so that's good. But what's surrounding it may not be so great. So let's take a look at that too. Ew. Yeah, so it feels smooth, so that's feeling good. You need to get some specialty tools for the period. Several different kinds out there. There's one that goes over, that typically chews up the alloy. This will fit in there. Like so. Sometimes you need a little love tap to get it in there. And this is a bracket that holds it in place so it doesn't like to crawl out. And you do have to readjust this every time you do a turn. So I'm going to use leverage to tighten this up. So backwards to tighten, forwards to loosen, just like the pedals. There we go. A little bit of leverage goes a long ways, right? So I can only do a little bit because I gotta loosen this bracket out a little bit each time as it's backing out on itself. So I don't want to get smushed on there. And at some point I can just take it off, but right now. And what I'm feeling is the gumminess of the anise at the time. So I don't feel like it's too bad. So I'm counting clockwise, turning the opposite side. It's backing that tool bracket out as it's wedging. And I'll eventually unscrew. Then, just what I something got soaked. So we're gonna get our tool on there. Get our, and you notice that is a multi-spoke wrench that I had to use to modify it to reach down to hold it in place. And yeah, it was one of those, you know, clever mechanic deals. Woo! Oh boy. There we go. All right. So I don't have to back this one out as I'm unscrewing it because it's all one piece. But let's take a gander of how this looks like. And there's this little protective sleeve that prevents the chain from getting in there, so I'll put that back in there. But oh, ew, yuck, that needs to be addressed. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Yeah. Gonna clean all this off and whew, take a look at that ugliness. Woo, my rag has turned to orange. That's how bad it is. This is, good thing is this is the alloy casing, so what it is just surface rust from the bottom bracket. But this will all clean out. And the nice smell of, and I'll put fresh lube in here, clean that up, as well as the headset. So we will feature cleaning those and put them all back together once this drains out of all that PV blaster. Just a little bit in there. In any case, we're going to fix that. Yep, and yep. And yeah, we just discovered disgusting rust, right? What do you do now? That's a good question. So we took it apart and whew, then we have this. Also have the bottom bracket, and the bottom bracket area can be cleaned out. Luckily though, these bearings, I have new ones. Pretty much new, very smooth. Luckily enough, they were pretty universal size for the Creaky S2 headset, so that's a win. Gonna clean out all these bits here for the bottom bracket, and even though, I mean, I'm gonna see if I can do that. How I do that? I use a Dremel. I've done this before, and I'm gonna use there's two types of pads I have. It's like a Scotch-Brite type pad, but before that, it's kind of like a cutting pad. and that is going to really, oh, there they are. These guys are kind of abrasive. You don't want to use them on the frame. I only do it on areas that I want to remove something completely. This will take off that alloy. From the alloy underneath, it'll take off all that rust and clean it up, because we don't want that sitting in there. It'll just contaminate the new bearings. In the bottom bracket area, same thing. We want to clean that bottom bracket. The bottom bracket still feels smooth, irony, so it's just the external casing that's just kind of compromised kind of deal. And yeah, you're kind of questioning like, well, what about this bit? Well, even though if it's cleaned off, that has no contact surface with anything in the bottom bracket area. So you got your threads here, and if anything needs to be cleaned and surfaced is this portion here. That's where the sleeve goes over on top of it. But other than that, I think this bottom bracket is just fine. And in any case, if I need to replace it, I'll just replace it. But actually, it's very smooth. It has like that. These are not like fast smooth spins. It's kind of like, it's smooth, but it has a thickness to it. And that's what you want off of these bottom brackets. Is like most of the bottom bracket bearings. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of resistance of that grease kind of thing, but it's a lot of load. That's all. Like, your body load torque is going through all this. You want that bearing to be very secure and not compromised. So, ironically, this is not compromised. Then I'm also going to clean the bottom bracket shell area. It's alloy, so it should be fine. Just need to clean it out really good. And also the cups on the headset. Clean those out by using probably Purple Power diluted. Try to just kind of clean that stuff out. If I need to bust out the big guns, I'll do some brake cleaner kind of thing. Other than that, let's just dive into this and see what kind of mess we come up with. I found scratch and swirl work really well on cleaning up these parts, and to just do it hand here, I do have a guide which helps me hold it in place while I do these parts, and it basically just goes in the vise. This is a cutting guide, and basically I just could put this in here. And what we do is we put just a dab onto that Brillo pad, push it in so it doesn't fling everywhere, and then proceed. Man, that just cleaned right off. See how that is polished? All right, hopefully we can do the crown race area just as nice. We'll push it out here so it has a little more room. Look at that. Just need to get that little corner there. Yeah, look at that. That looks a lot better. The reason why I didn't take that crown race off is I wanted to clean the crown race too, just in case I had any contaminants on there. So we want to make sure that's all good. So yeah, that's perfectly cleaned off and ready. So let's do the bottom bracket. So a little bit more. Got a little chunk here. Want to really polish this out. This is where that sleeve fits on. And this is just to remove that rust. So you can see it started etching the actual casing of it. So once you get that removed, it should be fine. It'll be packed with a lot of grease in there too. That'll actually prohibit it from rusting anymore, that kind of thing. So he even cleared up the rust that built up over on top of the decaling information here. So you know still it's a 118.5, a 65 BB with a 68 shell. So let's just proceed to get some more of that rust off. Yep, so for bottom bracket goes, I think that is pretty good. Now let's clean those areas where these parts are going to go in. Check it out. So at the bottom bracket, a lot of it already has pretty much filtered out. So I'm just going to give it a good cleaning. Like so, just a good flossing, get all that good stuff out there. If I needed to use a thread chaser, I would, but I don't think we need a thread chaser on this side. We just need to get a lot of that rust out of the way and clean up the threads so we can go with that new bottom bracket. And the cup this is alloy, so most of the time you just need a good heavy degreaser. And now I'll just kind of clean that up. And you got that little shim inside there. That goes up against the bottom bracket itself. And that kind of keeps the creaking and the noise down. That kind of thing. But that's all cleaned and ready to go. Now we're ready to install. Let's check it out. Alright, so you put the drive side, fixed side on this one on first. Give it a good layer of grease, and I'm just going to coat that as well. And these thread backwards to tighten. Oh, I forgot one piece, which is this silver shim thing. What this does is supposedly helps the chain from going into the bottom bracket area. And also it's a spacing thing, so super micro, but we want to put it back on there like so. Then we put our tool in to help guide, and you want to catch it just right. You don't want to cross thread these, so take your time finding that thread so it slides through smoothly. It should be very smooth now since both area surfaces have been completely cleaned. And then you can use that same tool to hold it before in place, but typically for tightening, just need it nice and tight. Now to the fixed side, non-fixed side. Same concept. I like to put some grease on the inside here, also the threads. This gives you that extra water barrier, which the water most likely came from the top on this guy. Same concept, but this is alloy on alloy. So, and it's two different hardness. You know, this is going to be a harder alloy on the bottom bracket shell, and this is actually fairly soft. So you can actually strip these out kind of easily. So you want to make sure you get that in there nice and tight. Same concept, pedal backwards to tighten. And then, there we go. Our bottom bracket's been thoroughly cleaned and rust free. onto the headset. So we got the same problem here. We need to clean out that rust that's in there. By doing that, you just, and these alloy cups typically clean pretty easily. If you really felt like you need to use a brush, I'd use a nylon brush. And then we want to make sure we get the bottom. The bottom is where we had all the problems. That bearing got compromised because it all just sat through, went through, right? So we want to make sure that is nice and clean before we slap a bearing in there. Clean it up. And if you want, you can floss the head tube. What it is just exposed carbon. Carbon doesn't rust, but you're going to have some of the remnants still in there. So I'm just going to try to get that rag to go through. Oh yeah. Kind of give it a good courtesy floss. And then you can add a little cleaner degreaser. Do a little twist dance. We just want to get as much of that out as possible. I mean, I'm sure there's other techniques with brushes and so forth, but this will definitely do the case. And looking underneath. So there we have it. It's pretty cleared out. So now we're going to throw in that headset. Clean the cup. This goes on the top. And new bearing. Well, put a little grease. A lot of grease. And the bearing fits in like so. So lucky I had a couple sets of these left over from some bad frames. And it just slides in there. And then you add another coat on the outside. Painting grease. That way the contact points and adds extra layer of water resistance and contaminants. And then you have your fork. And what goes on there first is this little bit. Oop, you can clean that. This is like a little wedge piece. This little wedge piece kind of holds the fork in place when you slam everything else on there. I had some rust contaminants on there. So make that rust free as possible. Then fork slides through. That little wedge piece goes, that's kind of like the race on the top portion. And then you can put the cap. That's so much better. And you put your stack back on. And then your handlebar. And these are all alloys, so none of this rust had any rust on it. All these parts here. So, you know, they didn't have any issues. And then you put your adjuster on there. So I will readjust this once the wheel is on, but I get it in place and position. So this way I can detail the frame and fork a little bit easier and install those parts. And once everything's assembled, that's when I readjust the compression of the bearings and make sure there's no knock or loose. But it's hard to do right now, I mean, you can tell a little bit if there is, but all I feel now is awesome smoothness. And now we're going to do frame detailing, or if you weren't going to do frame detailing, your headset, and then you reinstall all the parts, right? But the bottom bracket and headset, cleaned out and ready to go. So yeah, water is very evil on bikes, and we've known this for years, but looking at these, this destroyed the bearings of the headset. Typically, I don't need to replace these because there's usually no, movement too much for the most part. So these usually last a long time until you get contaminants and rust. Well, Portland to Seattle, rain, maybe got some rained on during the couple other events that he did, that kind of thing. Any time by ocean, salt water, humidity, that this is what you're combating. And in this case, we lucked out that the bottom bracket was still in good shape, just needed to be really cleaned, and taking that out. And also the headset had some new bearings, got them in there. So this bike is going to be ready to go. So I hope that helps understand how to take apart and clean and replace parts for the headset and bottom bracket. Those are kind of the tricky bits on a lot of bikes. Yeah, a few specialty tools, yes. Are they expensive? Not really on this particular model. So we'll have links below, information below in the description as well. If you have any other insights and so forth, that kind of thing, you've worked on these and you got some tips and tricks, please share with the community underneath the comments. And if it's beautiful in your neck of the woods, please go out for a ride. Thank you for hanging out with me. Until next time from the garage, and I'm just going to dive in and work the rest of my magic. But check out the pictures of this bike as completion. Fabulous.